Recording live in the Lucky Number 7 Lounge, this is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home, wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, also known as the Baller on a Budget, and you have stumbled across episode 80, where we bring you the latest in Las Vegas news and a little bit of talk about some awfully good booze. But before we can bring you any of that amazing top tier, top shelf, incredible, and best of all, free Las Vegas travel advice, we have to welcome in the founder of Dine, Drink Travel and Dine, Drink Vegas himself. Yes, of course, ladies and gentlemen, I can only be speaking about the high roller, formerly of the High Plains, the leader in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the Alabama slammer, the man who is always waiting on that limo to carry him away to his next resort destination. I mean, Bill. Good evening, Bill. How are you, sir?
Mostly sober. How are you, John?
I am also mostly sober, but I am fixing that as rapidly as I possibly can.
Well, then, should we tell our listeners how we're fixing our sobriety problem?
We are, and I'm going to let you introduce this one because this is you. We know you recently had a trip to Ireland. We talked about that in the last episode. This is a drink you found there. I will point out for listeners before Bill gets into this, if you think this sounds like a variation on the salty dog, you're in the ballpark. Bill, why don't you tell us what we're drinking?
So, near my hotel, we spent 3 days in Cork on our trip to Ireland 2 weeks ago. And we talked about that trip in episode 79. But we spent 3 days in Cork, and my favorite pub in Cork is a place called Costigan's. It is delightful. It's right by our hotel. It's super convenient to the university and the English market and everything else going on in Cork. But they had a special of the month. And what Costigan's called it was their gin of the month. And the gin was straightforward. It was their Dingle gin, which is delicious, but not particularly remarkable. I think the important here is to use a nice Irish gin. The problem is that the Irish bar is short pour. A pour is 35 milliliters, so something very much like 1 1/4 ounces. Then they added about 5 ounces of grapefruit soda and some sliced grapefruit. And, you know, you had to add a secure willingness to be seen in public with a Woo Girl college drink. But and they served it in. So, John, have you ever been to a bar in Acuna called Ma Crosby's?
No, I have not, but I do blame it on Mexico.
I was there once and I found myself not feeling any pain. And they serve drinks in giant fish bowls. And this is not an Irish thing, but Costigan's was serving this drink in the same fish bowls that Ma Crosby's used to serve drinks in when my friends would go to Acuna while I was at Bible study.
You know, when you're down in Acuna, if you ain't up to feeling alone.
Anyway, so I've been in that bar on 3 different trips. I've been in there probably pushing a dozen times now. And they've got every beer and every cider imaginable. They have perhaps the world's greatest whiskey collection. But at some point, I just took a flyer. It's like, yeah, I'll give that a shot. And on the one hand, is it a pretty basic highball? It is. But on the other hand, it is really super delicious. And it goes down like a fat kid on a seesaw. So I made mine today. I didn't have any Dingle gin, so I used gunpowder, Drumshanbo gunpowder gin, a different Irish gin, and otherwise made it exactly to recipe, and it is delicious. So, John, what sort of gin did you use in your drink? Because I'm already going to guess you used sugar-free soda.
So I'm going to ask you, what grapefruit soda did you use?
Fever Tree.
Fever Tree. Okay. So I tried to make the Texas version of this. So I used the Shiner Texas gin, which has a little bit of ruby grapefruit in it. And then for the soda combination, I had access to a couple different sugar-free or low-sugar grapefruit sodas, but I took an H-E-B sparkling grapefruit water and I sweetened it myself with monk fruit. And I've done that before to make like a Paloma or something like that. It works lovely. My grapefruit went bad, so I did not have a fresh slice of grapefruit, but I do have a dried grapefruit wheel in here. And it's, Bill, I'm going to admit, this is okay, but I'm not the world's biggest grapefruit fan. I think I would have rather had a gin and tonic. But I think my wife would have enjoyed this. I think if somebody's into grapefruit, this will do it. It just wasn't my bag.
So would she have preferred this, or would she have preferred the standard Paloma with tequila in it rather than gin?
Generally a Paloma, although the Shiner Texas gin she does actually like because she likes the grapefruit flavor. And I do think if I'd had an English or an Irish gin with more juniper, that also may have been a mistake. A little more juniper forwardness, I think, would make a big difference because now I've got grapefruit on grapefruit. But I ran out of Bombay Sapphire and I don't have any Irish gin. So this is the only gin in the house at the moment. And I think the moral of the story is don't use a gin that is citrus forward in this
Absolutely
drink.
not. No.
Use one this is where you want the juniper because I think a bigger hint of juniper would have balanced out the grapefruit.
I think the real story here is that simple cocktails are delicious. And is this a basic highball? Yeah, of course it is. But you don't have to have 3 million ingredients to make a delicious cocktail. The other thing I like about this is it's just a single. So it's a little bit easier to dose out how much alcohol I'm having over the course of an evening. But with the grapefruit soda, it's much more of a sipper. Listeners, you can't see this, but John can see on camera. I've got a little mini bottle of Jim Beam in my hand. And at some point later on in the evening, I'll have this. Will it be perfectly adequate? It will. But will I have a lot more alcohol a lot more quickly in a way which might not be health-wise optimal? Also true.
Right, yeah. And I have the rest of my big bottle of Shiner gin that I will probably drink straight from the bottle once we get past the Irish drink here. So that's how I'm planning to roll with this. I will say, Bill, I'm glad to hear you're coming around on the highball because I tried to sell you on how good a Cuba Libre could be, how good bourbon and Coke can be, or my favorite is Dr. Pepper and bourbon. Dr. Pepper and bourbon is a magical combination. So since you're more willing to consider carbonated drinks, which aren't usually your jam, we're going to revisit some of those down the road.
So I am absolutely willing to do that. I think one of the reasons that I enjoy this drink is, to be clear, I've got a sugared grapefruit soda, but there just tends to be somewhat less sugar in it than in the American, like high fructose corn syrup sort of Dr. Pepper or Coke sort of drinks. So it's sweet, but it's not obscenely sweet. And I enjoy that very much.
The way to counter that is to remember that it's not a Coke and bourbon, it's a bourbon and Coke.
You almost made me spit my drink on the microphone.
Yeah, I was trying to time that. I was watching you go for that sip. I was trying to time that. Bill, I think we've belabored that point. Oh, for future episodes, and I'm just going to do this on air. Do you still have any of your Old Fitzgerald bottled and bond?
I absolutely do, because that's only for special occasions.
Yeah, well, I procured a blah, blah, blah. I'm not drunk yet. I procured a bottle of that earlier this week, and I think either this week or next week, that may be the drink of the day, some whiskey tasting notes.
I would be delighted. I would be delighted to compare our views on blah, blah, blah with you.
Yeah, on Old Fitz. All right, why don't we jump into the news? Bill, you want the first one or you want to kick to me?
I will do it. Scott at Vital Vegas reported that Guy Fieri's El Burro Borracho is now closed at the Rio. No word on what may take its place as the Rio remodels and tries to rebuild its relevance in Vegas. I'm actually kind of surprised, John, that Guy Fieri went off strip to build that place. I'm not surprised that it closed. What's your reaction to this news?
So you got to remember who managed the Rio before the new owners took over, and that's Caesars. And most of these celebrity chef locations are in Caesars properties. So this is a holdover from Caesars management. I think it's good for Rio to try to go for something different. I hope the Rio will bring in something run by local chefs. Maybe even talk James Trees into putting in a second Esther's location. I think Rio needs to find a way to build its locals audience while it regains its footing with tourists. Because right now it's a hard sell for tourists to go off strip. I've tried to talk you into staying at Rio. Excuse me, you haven't been super excited yet. So I think I think going with something run by a local that's going to bring in local diners is going to be paramount while they start becoming a draw for tourists again.
I think that's a fair judgment.
Scott also shared images from the remodeled rooms at the Vanderpump, or the hotel formerly known as the Cromwell, which he notes have a clean yet feminine vibe. Bill, I've included a picture in the run sheet just for convenience. Would you agree with Scott's assessment? That seems to be a little girly little room.
I mean, a little bit, but not so much that it would dissuade me from staying there. I mean, there's some soft pink tones, one or two, right? Like highlight points in the room. But it's a brown and white hotel room that's well decorated with a few pops of color. So does it have a vaguely feminine vibe? Sure. Would that stop me from staying there? It would not.
I agree with you. I mean, I'm man enough. I'm not going to be afraid of the frou-frou decor of the room. I will say it seems pretty clear to me that as the Vanderpump, Vegas, Caesars wants this property to appeal for girls trip and romantic getaway. Like, they are not aiming at the group of chuckleheads you and I travel with. No big sports book, nothing like that.
Yeah, that is true. I will just say that I remember this all the way back when it was Wild Bill's Gambling Saloon. Like, I've been going to Vegas for a while. There's some incidents I won't mention on air, John. I'm not sure I'm allowed in that building.
Yeah, well, for good news, it has new management. Oh, speaking of not allowed, we asked the question in the last episode. This is not on the run sheet, but I'm going to throw this in. Whether American at TI has karaoke, and thanks to a Travel Ruby video that I want to talk with you about once we get off air, they will have karaoke. So the next time I have the opportunity, I will see if I'm still on the banned for life list.
I don't think they specifically told you were banned for life. I think they told you had to leave that evening.
I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
Yeah, that's fair. In other news, Las Vegas locally shared that Luke Combs broke the all-time attendance record at Allegiant Stadium at a Saturday, March 22nd concert, beating the Canelo Crawford fight and even Super Bowl, whatever, I guess that's 58, LVII. I can barely read in English, let alone Latin. And John, I actually would have gone to that concert. Listeners, if you're not familiar with Luke Combs's work, he's the artist behind songs such as Long Neck, Ice Cold Beer, Never Broke My Heart. There are a number of slower songs there, but it's very much an upbeat, fast kind of country music, and I would have paid a lot of money to go to that concert. John, what do you think drove so much interest in this particular country artist?
I really do think that country, or at least what Nashville passes for country, and I have opinions about that, but I'm going to try not to tell everybody to get off my lawn tonight. Look, it's just got a killing. I think that kind of concert is fun. It's easy to go to. It's got mass appeal. I'm going to be honest, Bill. When I listen to country, it ain't Luke Combs. I'm very much into retro country. I like Red Dirt Texas artists. I love Robert Earl Keen. I like Charlie Crockett, who is prolifically putting out old school sounding country with some really fascinating songwriting. Luke Combs is a little too much pop for me, but I don't begrudge the guy's success. And I get it. His music's catchy. It's upbeat. I'm sure it was a fun show.
I'm sure it was. And to your point, I also listened to that old school Texas country that you're talking about. I've got several of those artists in my routine playlist. I guess there's just something about the stories that Luke Combs tells which resonates with me. And I won't lie, once or twice I've sung along in the car. The catchiness appeals to me.
Well, maybe I need to go revisit his catalog. It's been a while since I heard one of his songs. I'm willing to be wrong, but I just tend to be a bit of a country music purist, and I haven't listened to top 40 country probably since Cowboy Troy and Big and Rich ruined both country and rap at the same time, which was like 25 years ago, and I was done. at that
They
point.
are no longer on your lawn, John.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize for being old redneck guy. Okay, MGM has announced, and what I'm calling budget news, we're going to debate the ballerness of it in a minute. MGM has announced all-inclusive two-night stays at either Luxor or Excalibur that include 2 meal vouchers per day at select dining venues with beer or wine included per day. Passes for the roller coaster at New York, New York, and tickets to shows such as Thunder from Down Under or Carrot Top or the Australian Bee Gees or Fantasy. My God, the typos on this. I typed this fast. And the Blue Man Group. Packages start at $330 depending on what dates you book. And there is some ability to upgrade the room type in case you don't want the base room at the Dirty Castle. Bill, $330 for two people to dine and have show tickets for 2 nights in Vegas. Does this have your attention?
Not at those properties, no. Because, we've stayed at the Luxor a few times. It is a perfectly fine property, but you can routinely get rooms significantly cheaper than that and then just a la carte things more cheaply. I'm pretty sure for $330, they're not sending you to Le Cirque for dinner. They're probably like, here's a slice of pizza from the food court.
It's a little better than that. So they have the Tap Sports Bar either at Luxor or the MGM Grand. They have Tom's Urban over in New York, New York. They have the Pyramid Cafe and the Backstage Deli at Luxor. There's 1 or 2 venues at the Dirty Castle. And then they even have the Noodle Bar over in Mandalay Bay. None of this is baller food. But if you make the most of those meals, and you could have breakfast and lunch on that property and go to dinner somewhere nice. If you wanted to see any of these shows, I will say breakfast and lunch for 2 days in a row, including a glass of beer or a glass of wine, and your show tickets and the room, unless you're a high roller, in which case this probably isn't for you anyway, that really is a pretty good deal. It's pretty competitive with what the Plaza is doing. My wife and I actually talked about, we have a trip booked in late June, early July. We're considering canceling our room at Aria and doing this for 2 nights and having a night downtown. Ultimately, I think we keep our Aria booking because I kind of want to get off strip and do some local dining on this trip. I want to hit up some tiki bars. I want to hit up a locals restaurant or 2. But, I am about to take a pay cut. I could see myself doing this.
So, John, before we move on to our next news story, I've actually got an update on the drink of the day. So I had mostly finished my drink. There was a little bit floating around at the bottom, but I'm like, meh, what the heck? I'll pour in this airline mini bottle of Jim Beam. Jim Beam with just a little bit of sweet something down in the bottom of it, even if that sweet something is grapefruit, is infinitely better than just regular Jim Beam.
Yeah, and regular Jim Beam is drinkable. It's not the world's greatest bourbon. I do like Jim Beam and Coke Zero.
I trust you, and I will give that a shot. In other news, John, I think we talked, what was it, like 3 episodes ago, about a potential bid for Caesars. And when we say Caesars, folks, we're talking about Caesars Entertainment, not just Caesars Palace, but the whole group. And we've got an update. So Reuters reported 2 weeks ago that Ambassador Tillman Fertitta bid roughly $7 billion for Caesars Entertainment, outbidding a group led by legendary investor Carl Icahn. Multiple reports since then have reported that intensive talks are ongoing. To be clear, the deal has not been finalized, and there are several ways it might fall apart. But there is now open in public. We are trying very hard to build the fire that's underneath all this smoke. John, do you think this deal gets completed?
I really don't know, but I hope it does. If for no other reason, those of you who watch my TikTok channel, and I don't know if Bill put this on YouTube or not. I made a short video the other day. You can pick up Landry's gift cards for 20% off at Costco. And I think Sam's has the same deal. And those can be used at the Golden Nugget. If Mr. Fertitta takes over Caesars, I think you will start to see some Landry's restaurants pop up where you can get those kind of deals. And I would imagine he would also take those gift cards as payment for your room and such. There's an opportunity here for Vegas travelers to get a good deal. The Golden Nugget is not the cheapest place downtown by any stretch. But I think what they do at the Nugget would translate to the Strip, and I think he brings a better value than the people currently running Caesars who seem to want to nickel and dime people to death.
So the reason I'm excited about this, and I hope it winds up happening, is I mean, we take some trips to the Strip and we take some trips to downtown, and I would love to have a loyalty program that worked in both locations. Because now there's not anybody that breaches both of those territories. I would love to gain loyalty points regardless of which of those two parts of town I was staying in. I think that'd be fantastic.
Oh, I think at that point, yeah, I've never been that big of a fan of the Golden Nugget. And when I stay downtown, I stay other places. But yeah, I think that by default would switch my primary loyalty from MGM to whatever that brand is. And I don't know if it would go by the Caesars brand or the Golden Nugget brand or Caesars Nugget. I don't know. But if they could put that together with one reward system, yeah, 100%. 100%.
Cool. Well, what else do we have, John?
Well, Facebook user Vegas Hot Mama, excuse me. And by the way, be careful searching that. Shared that the White Castle location at Casino Royale on the Strip and one other White Castle in the Valley, but not the one downtown, will soon close. Now, Bill, I know you hate going into Casino Royale for any reason, let alone a $1.50 slider. Are you sad at all about the loss of the White Castle?
I absolutely am. White Castle is a classy, classy place, which has gotten me through many Vegas evenings, although I must be thinking about, this isn't the location I'm thinking about. I enjoy White Castle. White Castle makes me happy.
Yeah, I do too. Although really, and you, every time I say this, you don't want to go for it. The cheap hot dog stand at the back of Casino Royale, I'm telling you, nope. That is the way to go. That is a good deal. I think it's up to like $3.50 now, but still don't care. Big, huge hot dog, good value.
If you go to prison, there are absolutely better cells than other cells, but you're still in prison. I don't know that there, like a shady hot dog cart at the back of a cheap hotel, which is probably needs to be condemned by the health department. I can't imagine why that's a thing I would eat. I don't need to lose weight that bad.
I used to be a 7-Eleven employee. It turns out I have a cast iron stomach when it comes to things that have been on one of those roller grills. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
I hope so, brother. So, in other news, Vegas Publicity reports that Red Rock Casino will celebrate its 20th anniversary with an event called Taste of Station, which is a showcase of food vendors at Red Rock and other Station casino resorts. The event will be held poolside on April 18th from 6 to 9 p.m. with general admission tickets running for $100 and VIP access complete with champagne and oysters for $175. John, this would absolutely get me to go out to Red Rock, and I would be torn. I would want to buy VIP access just because it said VIP. I don't know that I would want the cheap champagne and desert oysters they're offering.
I do. I think that is baller on a budget move. I don't think Station Casinos is going to run the risk of food poisoning their guests where they're trying to showcase their brand. I have a feeling that there's a degree of a loss leader here. They are known for oyster bars at a couple of their properties that people will literally stand in line in for hours. So yeah, Bill, I think this is an opportunity to dabble in a bunch of foods, meet some chefs, mingle with Vegas' fanciest people for a price under $200. Yeah, that VIP pass is baller on a budget all day long.
I will take your word for it, man.
All right. Well, Travel Zork broke down numbers from the annual visitor profile study by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, including this factoid, that 60% of visitors pay the advertised rates, but only 13% stay in comped rooms. But Boomer and Gen X, who I imagine comprise an awful lot of the people who go to Vegas, are not included in the survey. And there are a ton of us geezers who go to Vegas and we absolutely take our comps and discounts instead of paying rack rate Thank you very much.
Well, also, that's a lot of the people who would have the money to gamble enough to get a comped room. If there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, this is one of those times you're using statistics to prove some random point. You can't exclude everybody above the age 45 from your measure of how many people in Vegas have comped rooms and then have anything like a valid measure. It's kind of like having a study of the world's most handsome men and not including you and me. It's just statistically invalid.
Yeah, we'll throw the curve up and make all the other guys seem more handsome.
You know what? Never mind. I'm going to stop because I am a good citizen. Yeah.
So I should have updated this one. Go ahead. I didn't update this one.
It is okay. This is a day old now, but I suspect you're about to give me one more day of news. So Vegas hit 96 degrees on Tuesday, March the 24th, which marks 7 straight days of new daily records. And we all know that Vegas summers are known for soaring triple-digit temps. Having the upper 90s in March is unseasonably warm, and if this is March, summer may be brutal. So, John, what sort of update do you have on that?
Well, the high today was 92. They're projecting 93 for tomorrow. Vegas is normally in the upper 70s to lower 80s right about now. I will say we're going through this. I don't know what is happening in Alabama, but I will tell you in far west Texas, it seems that Mother Nature or God Almighty, sorry, I lost you for a second, have forgotten their calendar. So I did read somewhere for my neck of the woods that some meteorologists think that even though we're having an above average spring, depending on what happens with El Nino or La Nina out in the Pacific, we may have a mild summer. I can only hope that's the case in Vegas because my late June, early July trip may be 8,000 degrees if something doesn't give.
So to another point you made, John, you've visited me here in Alabama. The weather here is just better than in the deserts of far western Texas. It's been, it got pretty hot on Saturday of last week when it was 82, but it's now back in the low to mid 70s. You even get more tornadoes than we do. Like the weather here is just objectively great.
Yeah, no, it's dry air. You enjoy your humidities. I will take the dry.
You will take the dry with the 115 degrees, where it's already in the upper 90s in March. It is 20 degrees cooler here than it is where you live, and it is glorious.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, John, one of the things we like to do on every episode is something weird and wild. Do we have any Vegas WTF news this week?
Oh, do we? Las Vegas Weekly reports that after a shooting, the workers of a brothel in Pahrump have formed a union in order to demand better safety and security. Sherry's Ranch fired several workers for advocating for unionization, though none had any previous worker disciplinary issues prior to their firing, according to their labor lawyers who spoke with Las Vegas Weekly. Bill, I know we don't like to get political on this podcast when we can help it, and neither of us are from vastly unionized states. But I'm thinking in the world's oldest profession, when you have to worry about the violence of male customers, unionizing for the sake of demanding better safety and security doesn't seem like the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
So, in your conversations, John, before with the girls there at Sherry's Ranch, what sort of experience have they reported to you?
I think you're confusing Sherry's Ranch with the alley behind El Cortez.
I very much hope that all of those women are safe. I guess my question is, what constitutes an employee in the state of Nevada? Because I would have assumed that the girls working there were legally classified as independent contractors, which raises a host of interesting legal questions.
Yeah, I have no idea about that. That is not an area where I have any expertise. I am entirely too puritanical in my inner core. Going to Vegas a couple of time years and making a podcast about Vegas is about as naughty as I get. So I've never looked into the legal side of that particular industry because I've never looked into any side of the industry. But it appears they must be employees because they unionized. Independent contractors don't do that. And it is legal in the state of Nevada outside of Clark County. But yeah, you raise an interesting question. If they were independent contractors, then whose responsibility would providing security be the venue or the contractor? So that opens up a whole lot of legal issues that I'm not equipped to answer, but I'm guessing there are lawyers who patronize the venue who probably know.
I mean, if they're employees, it would be the duty of the employer almost always to provide a safe working environment. Now, there are a host of questions which that raises, but I'm also wondering about let us assume they're employees. I'm wondering about the action of the employer here, because I'm assuming that there's not a whole lot of folks who are wanting to take that job. And if they do want to take that job, they're probably wishing to generate their own income. To take that job and be just a straight up employee, I hope everybody is healthy and safe.
Yeah, me too. And my inner libertarian and my inner Puritan fight about how I feel about this. My position on the podcast is going to be neutral. I want to be non-judgmental. You and I neither want to visit adult entertainment establishments. When we visit Las Vegas Valley, we know an awful lot of people who go to Vegas do. I don't wish to cast judgment on anybody. But I do think the story was interesting. And I do think that if this sort of enterprise is going to happen, then by golly, I do hope they keep the ladies safe.
100%. Absolutely.
Well, on that downer of a note, I think we need to bring this snooze fest in for a landing. Bill, why don't you tell the listeners where they can find more fantastic Dine, Drink, Travel, and Dine, Drink Vegas content while I drink gin straight out of the bottle?
Folks, we have some videos on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas where we bring you short and focused videos which help you plan your next trip to Las Vegas. Something like 5 or 10 minutes on a particular hotel room or a particular restaurant. Increasingly, we're putting more of our videos on Dine, Drink, Travel. The videos about my recent trip to Ireland are rolling out there on a weekly basis. We also have things like the executive lounges at the Las Vegas airport and at least some experiments with our Las Vegas content, which is where your last video that you sent me, John, wound up going. In addition, you can find me on essentially every social media platform at Dine, Drink, Travel. And the most important of those is almost certainly X, because that's where you can find John.
I'm at Dine, Drink, John. I'm happy to talk to you about Las Vegas, about the great state of Texas, about adult beverages, about coffee, about why the Dallas Cowboys continue to promise big moves in the offseason and sign the dregs of the league and other people's hand-me-downs. Any of those topics, would be glad to chat with you. We're so glad you found this podcast today. If you enjoyed our content, if you have a friend who needs travel advice to get themselves ready for their next trip to Vegas, or an enemy that hates listening to old fat white guys drink and talk for hours and hours or minutes and minutes, please, please, please like, subscribe, share, retweet, repost, whatever your podcast and social media platforms let you do so that we can grow an audience. It'll help us continue to keep bringing you this top shelf content for years to come. Thank you so much for listening, and until the next episode, happy travels.
That is a heck of a slug you were taking from that bottle, John.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. And we got that burp for our blooper. I'll just have to trim it when you get the audio, I'll cut it off the front end and drop it on the back end. Ooh, gin burp. Okay. We're editing that and moving it to the end.
All right. Great.
All right. Anyway, all right, never mind. I'm done with this. All right, here we go.